Okay, well, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks very much for coming along to listen. My name is Mark Prichard. I'm from CloudBees. I want to apologize in advance. I'm sure many of you, well, I hope many of you had a better weekend than I did. I'm afraid I dislocated my shoulder and I'm very right-handed, so this is intended to have plenty of demos and stuff. So if the demos are a little bit jerky, then you'll bear with me, I'm sure. So I was going to make some jokes about architecture, but I'll just leave it at that. So here's myself, who I am, what I did. As you can see from those sort of middle ones there, the BA systems and Oracle space, I spent a lot of my career in what I'd call the sort of enterprise Java mainstream. App servers have been very good to me. I did a lot of work on Tuxedo way back before this. Most recently, over the last decade or so, I spent a lot of time on the WebLogic product as well. So that's my background. What I do now is very different and, to me, very exciting. I work at CloudBees. Now, CloudBees is a platform as a service provider, and that's really what I'm going to talk about here. But the particular angle that I wanted to sort of just explore for this sort of late afternoon session was just to look at it from the point of view of people like myself, and I hope that there are people here in the room who share this perspective. You understand a lot of the strengths and the advantages of the sort of enterprise Java development style, all the good things about that technology, but as we all know, I mean, things have moved on. There are very good reasons for that, but how can we kind of keep what was good and yet get a lot of the good things that are in the new world? And I believe that there is a way of combining these things. I think there's a lot of really interesting things that are happening that do align well together. I'm going to show you some of the projects that I build. I'll give you, the references to my repos and the projects and so on, so you can have a look at that and try them out. And a lot of this stuff that I'm going to mention, I've blogged about on the CloudBees blog and my own blog. So, I'll give you those references at the end as we go through. So I don't want to, be controversial. I'm not trying to sort of talk about enterprise Java as if it were dead, but, from my perspective, I'm looking backwards now, and I'm saying, okay, what were the things that we liked? Well, we liked, definitely, I think that there was a standard way to build applications, that you didn't have to reinvent the wheel. There was lots and lots of stuff. You knew how to do it. If you wanted an example, you could find one. There were good tutorials, lots of stuff like that, all the sort of, Lars Vogel materials and everything else. So that was a good thing. If you're trying to put together a team to do large projects, it's very helpful. You don't want everybody rushing off and trying to do everything in different ways, because as you know, it's just not going to work. And obviously, we like that sort of massive ecosystem of well-proven tools. There are a lot of libraries, just about anything. If you want some kind of Java library, Java project, open source project to do things, you can go and find one. You can assess whether it's going to fit your needs. You can probably find a choice, and you can pick up what you need, and you can use it. So that was all good. And the other thing which, obviously we're particularly interested in here is, the rich set of APIs and containers that were there that simplified things like messaging, transaction handling, connection pooling, okay? You can say in some cases these were fairly verbose, but they were very comprehensive, and they were pretty simple models to follow. So I think I would suggest those were good things. Those are, things that we want to aspire to. And the other good thing, I think, from the app server era, if I can use those terms, though, I mean, of course, many people are still being very successful and are using those technologies, but was all the tooling and the infrastructure that was put there to simplify deployment, configuration, resource management. You want to, as I say, configure up connection pools, database connections, and so on, and monitor those things. Well, that was kind of all part of the package. Okay, so those were the things we liked, and it worked. I'm sure I've worked on many very large projects built using enterprise Java, and they worked very successfully. So I like that. So What do we not like? Well, you can add your own to the list. These are the things that I found started to grate on me over time. The stack was often too heavy for a lot of the applications I needed. There are very few applications that needed, even half of all the kind of enterprise Java containers or, the APIs that are there in JavaEE and so on. You just didn't need that much. And as a result, the stack became too large. It was slow to start up. WebLogic particularly suffered from this. And what that meant was that it made it, much harder than it should have been to do sort of iterative development. And you had this whole, sort of symbiotic business all around people doing, trying to avoid redeploys, all the, the zero turnaround folks. That's all good stuff, but really it's all just trying to solve a problem that shouldn't have been there in the first place, which is that it just took too long to redeploy these things and to bring the servers up. And I think as a result, you saw the sort of pace of innovation slowed. It did become increasingly hard to sort of mix and match application services. So one of the things that I like very much about, say, the Node.js world is the ability just to pull in any kind of package. You go out there, you find a package on GitHub, you check it out, you see who's supporting it, who's doing things with it. You can pull that into your application, you use it. You sort of see, nowadays you see this, a lot of new software as a service providers out there. You want to bring those into your application infrastructure as well. With sort of JavaEE, it was kind of, well, you use everything that we have, but extending it became a little bit difficult. And I think one of the things that increasingly used to grate on you is kind of sizing, scaling, and performance just became a black art. It was like lots of people made a very good living out of being able to analyze the performance of app servers and applications running on them. But the truth was there was an awful lot of stuff there that was quite hard to do. So that would be my quick summary of sort of, if you like, what was good and what went wrong. And so when we think about the new world now, where we have these elastic on-demand resources, I'm going to talk obviously a lot about the cloud and the applications that we can now build and deploy in the cloud. I thought, well, let's just put on one slide the sort of things that I'd like to I'd like to have my cake and eat it. What are the sort of applications that I find myself wanting to build? What are the services I want from whatever my infrastructure is, and what is infrastructure is an interesting question nowadays. But well, what I want is, in most cases for my applications, I'm happy to run pretty lightweight stacks with a variety of web frameworks. There are a lot of ones out there. Different people will have different preferences. A lot of the apps I'm going to be showing you, I'm just running using something like Tomcat. And then I have frameworks that run on top of that. What I would like to do is I'd like to have a choice. I can either have what I call a fully curated service. So I would like somebody to make sure that I've got all the latest bits. Whenever I run my app, I've got the latest version, I've got all the latest packages, I've got security fixes applied, on time. So that's what I call fully curated. That's something I'd like because I don't want to worry about that. But on the other hand, I'd like to feel that I have the option to have what I call a runtime managed stack, which is where somebody will sort of take care of it, monitor my application, restart it, let me know if there's a problem, anything like that. But I would like to have the ability to at least control all the bits that go into that stack. So in this case, I might say, well, no, I don't want you to give me the whole stack. I'm going to specify exactly which version I pick up. Maybe there's been a latest bug fix that came out, and it turns out it's not such a good thing. We've all had those situations. You apply the fix, it creates more problems than it solves. I'd like to at least be able to say, this is the exact sort of micro version of the stack that I want to run, because that's what I need, and I know that works for my application. In many cases, the sort of applications I like to build, and the things I show you, you'll see that I'm very interested in kind of mobile application development. I do a lot in that space. And I'm very interested in applications that are going to provide REST services. I'm going to be using a lot of JSON to serve up data in that way. I'm also interested in consuming services from third-party SaaS providers, running all the way from, say, Google geocoding API through to smaller, more specialized SaaS providers that do particular things that I want. And again, typically those are going to be served up through a REST and JSON format. So that's the kind of thing that I want to be able to do very effectively and quickly. In terms of the elasticity, well, I want to get away from the sort of the black arts. I just want to be able to deploy things as I need them. If I know that I'm going to have a certain amount of capacity for a given server, and I want to be able to start up extra instances of the server as I need it. I want to be able to do that very fast. I want to be able to give the servers back when I don't need them. And then I want the kind of routing services in front of that are going to do my reverse proxies and load balancing and so on. And then if I want, when I say application services, here I'm thinking back to things like message queuing, notifications, storage, those kind of services, sort of lower level programming constructs. Then I'd like the fact that I have a choice. I'd like a set of consistent APIs that are easy for me to use as a Java programmer. And as you gather from the talk, I'm going to be talking a lot about the AWS APIs. That's what I tend to go to first. But on the other hand, there may be SaaS services that give me alternatives to that I'm interested in. So for example, I was working on a plugin for our Jenkins product the other day for work with mobile emulators. And what I wanted to do was to upload an Android APK so that I could, a SaaS service that was running an emulator in the cloud could show me how it was working and so on. I didn't want to run it locally. I wanted to do all that in the cloud. So I just wanted a simple service where I could dump that APK file and the emulator could run. So there's lots of ways I could do that. I use something like File Picker, but there's any number of services there, and you just pick what's suitable for you. So it could be, a low-level API that you would use, and you want something like an S3 bucket, or maybe there's some other service that does what you want in a slightly different and more attractive way. So I think that the nice thing about the new world is that you can make your choice here, and you can mix and match. That was what I was trying to get to on the earlier slide. Now, obviously I want the sort of management, the monitoring capabilities. I kind of want all that built in, and I'd like that done for me. I've really gone past the phase of my life where I actually enjoy writing code that does anything like that. So if you do, then that's great. I admire you, but I don't, and I'd like that basically to come as a checkbox item. And then, I'm really a Java programmer, so that's what I like. I want integration with the Java tooling that I use, whether it's sort of Eclipse or IntelliJ. And again, I'm sort of fairly non-religious about these things. I do use both, though I'll probably be showing you Eclipse in this case. So that's the kind of world, that's the kind of stuff that I'm doing and that I find quite flexible and enjoyable using the sort of PaaS model, and that's what I'm really going to be talking about. So if you think all that's rubbish, then feel free to walk out and I won't be offended, because that's really what I'm going to be talking about. So I'm going to sort of mix and match between some sort of examples of applications and also telling you a little bit more about CloudBees and Platform as a Service and what we do and how we do it. So just quick show of hands, who's familiar with any form of PaaS? Who's used a Platform as a Service product? Heroku, Cloud Foundry, Google App Engine? I see a few, maybe a half bit more. Okay, so very quickly for the rest of you, the thing about Platform as a Service is that we, CloudBees, will run your applications for you. I mean, with differences, the same is true of Platform as a Service vendors. So what happens is that, instead of installing infrastructure and then deploying an app onto that, basically, you just deploy the application to the platform. So you take your built artifacts, whether that's a web app or whatever it is, And you push that up through a variety of tools, command line or IDE integrations, and that app will automatically deploy in containers that we run and manage for you. We do that ourselves, running on top of lower level Amazon cloud infrastructure. So these are running on Amazon AMIs and so on. And the other part of what we do, and this is where CloudBees slightly differs from most of the other sort of mainstream PaaS providers, is that we also provide this full-blown build environment based on Jenkins CI. And again, I have a quick slide introducing Jenkins. I feel again, most people in this audience are probably familiar with Jenkins, continuous integration server in the Java space. I think it's pretty well known. And Kosuke Kawaguchi, who founded that whole community, is one of my colleagues at CloudBees. And that really is the core of what we do in the build space. So this is the sort of one architecture slide I have. If you look at what we do as a platform, we want our cloud platform to take you all the way through from the point where you write the code, you make a commit, and you push that up into the remote repository. Now that could be a public repository like GitHub, CollabNet, or what have you, or it could be a private repository that we host in the cloud. So you can do either route, and either one will work. You can actually mix and match the two and so on. But for simplicity, let's just assume you're going to push this to GitHub. And you push that code to GitHub. You have a build job, which is configured. It's all running in the cloud. So as soon as that commit is pushed, you're going to have a webhook that kicks in, that starts a Jenkins continuous integration build. Again, if you're not familiar with continuous integration, the whole philosophy here is that as far as possible, your software is always kept in a sort of release-ready state. So it's not like everybody has at the code, and then to a certain point, somebody has the job of kind of integrating it and making sure it all works and that your code doesn't break mine. By doing a continuous build, test, automated cycle, we make sure that if I do anything at any point that causes a problem with the build, we will know immediately, the code gets backed out, and I get notified, and I have to fix the problem, or we have to get together and fix the problem, but you don't have to go back after 100 different commits and try and work out what the problem was and who broke it. So that build all happens. All this is done using sort of on-demand resources allocated in the cloud. That's what we mean by the Jenkins executors. And this is where you start to see the sort of attraction of using the cloud in this way, because although you can run Jenkins on-premise, we have a lot of customers that do that as well. But the reality is, if you've got lots of different people, if we're all working on a project and we're all doing our stuff and pushing in bits to our parts of the project, particularly if you're getting close to, say, a release milestone cycle, when you've got a lot of activity going on, you could have a lot of these continuous integration builds all having to run. So what happens here is that we can simply spin up new executors, because these are just Amazon AMIs, these are just virtual compute environments, and we spin them up, run the build, get rid of them. So the elasticity is very valuable for that. And then what we do is take the built artifacts, and then we can deploy them. We can deploy them into private environments or into public environments. You could have, dev, staging, test environments, and so on. But in its simplest form, we deploy those into runtime application containers, whichever container is suitable for the application that you're actually running. And then we provide all the necessary sort of application infrastructure like, session routing, SSL routers, session clustering, all that kind of stuff. And we also provide a set of partner services for things like the ALM, the application monitoring, people like New Relic, App Dynamics, and so on, paper trail, log file management, and so on. All those kind of services are all there, and you basically just associate them with your application and say, I want that service for that app, and it'll all be done for you. So that's pretty much our model, and you have two different ways of doing this that really are relevant only to how you pay for it. So you can do it either using dedicated cloud resources, and this is if you're deploying sort of production quality applications, you have a certain level of performance that you need. You can say, okay, I want this app always to run on, certain Amazon setups, and you can size them appropriately, and nothing else will ever run on those environments. Or we can actually run them in a shared pool. We call this multi-tenanted, and the whole point about this, of course, is it's a very efficient use of resources. We can do this very cheaply. This is what enables us to offer a free and complete service for developers. So you could sign up now for CloudBees. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to enter a credit card or anything. You can try all this out. I'll show you how to do that later on. It's very straightforward, but you could set up a complete build integration cycle. You could deploy your apps. And the reason we can do all that is because we can do all this efficiently in a sort of multi-tenanted mode. So this is Jenkins. I think probably most of you are familiar. I'm not going to dwell on this. The key thing about Jenkins really is the strength of the community there. So, I mean, there are, I think, well over 3 or 4 new plugins coming out every week now. This has been running for well over 7 years. It's extremely widely adopted. This is the number 1 open source CI server. And just looking at all the messages about new plugins that I get every day, I can tell you that, I think this number is now more like 650. So the real value of that is not sort of just chest beating. The fact is that, if you've got any kind of Java-related build or test automation tool, there's probably already a Jenkins plugin for it. If there isn't, it's pretty easy to write one, and there's probably somebody already working on it right now. So that's the beauty of this, is that it's very open and extensible. So if you need things and you don't currently have them, it's easy to get them. And there's a community that will jump in to support you and help you. So just a little bit of terminology. I always find this helpful just to have in my head. There's a lot of as a service, okay? I've talked about platform as a service. I hope I've given you a picture of what we do, just to differentiate this from other things that are delivered as a service. So infrastructure as a service is classic Amazon Web Services, okay? You're talking about, I want a server instance. I want a block of storage. I want an SSL router or something like that. That is infrastructure as a service. And that's just like getting physical infrastructure in the old days, but this is all delivered in the cloud. You don't ever see a server with the lights flashing and all that kind of stuff. But it's still the same thing. You're still essentially getting a server, and you are managing at least some aspects of that server. You don't have to manage the physical stuff. You don't have to manage the power. You don't have to manage the low-level network connectivity, but you still have to manage the upper stack network configuration. You're going to have to manage applications that you want to run on that. You're going to have to be responsible for deploying them and monitoring them and so on. And then going right to the other extreme, software as a service. Salesforce.com is the sort of canonical example we all know. But there are now a whole variety of different players in this space who offer extremely useful software as a service. And the key thing here is that these are packaged applications. So there are services you consume. You may be able to customize them. You may be able to extend them. You can certainly use them in your applications. But if you are writing your own applications that are doing the things that you need to do, typically you need to be looking at platform as a service. And what we're really thinking about here is, how do I take advantage of platform as a service and consume these other things judiciously in a way that's going to enhance my productivity? Sometimes I need sort of a little bit more low-level control. I need access to sort of more powerful low-level APIs, but I don't want to spend my whole time coding to those, or that's inefficient. At the same time, I want to take advantage of software as a service, but I don't want to be straitjacketed by that into only the things that the software as a service providers will support and do. Well, I said I'd show you how to get going with CloudBees, the easiest way, just go to cloudbees.com and sign up. I'd love you to do it anytime. But when you go in there, you'll see a toolbar, and up on the top left, there'll be a thing that says ClickStarts. And what are ClickStarts? Well, there's something we put together as a way to create that whole picture I showed you, the sort of life cycle of a CloudBees project, where you have the source code repository, you have the continuous integration build job, you have the deployment of all the runtime and all the resources. All of that is a complete cloud project. You can do it all in the cloud, and what these are what I call projects in a box. And that's very nice, because it means it's pretty simple to set them up, but it's much nicer to do it with just one click and give it a name. But the other thing that sort of almost was, I wouldn't say it's unintended, but it came as a nice side effect, was that it's also a great way for you to start playing with a new technology if you're not familiar with it. I'm sure you've had this experience. I have. You think you read about something, you want to do it, you download something, you try to run it, bang. You're immediately Googling for all kinds of errors, and you don't know how to work, and all you want to do is to get at something running so that you can play with it and work out whether it's actually going to be useful for you or not. Well, what's great here is these all work. We've set them all up. They'll deploy all the bits that are needed. They're all configured to work in the right way. You can run them up. You can use them as a starting point for your own investigation. You can just use it as a teaching aid or whatever. So, for example, you want to run up Play Framework. Click on that, run it, and you'll end up with a complete project deployed, and you'll have the full source code and everything. Now, there are loads of these coming all the time. The other nice thing here is that the community have got very engaged with this project. So if you go onto GitHub, look for the CloudBees community, you'll see a lot of us, but you'll also see a lot of people who are involved in those different technologies and frameworks who are contributing these ClickStarts in there. And you'll see a whole load of new ClickStarts that are coming up all the time. So even if they're not in our panel, they'll probably be in the community here. They're great for demos. I'm going to show you one in a minute, but they're also useful for sharing things in teams. And I think this is another aspect of my career that I found the cloud has sort of provided these interesting echoes. Because as you saw earlier, I spent a lot of time in sort of systems integrators, putting together these big, projects. And I mean, okay, they were of their time, and the technologies they used, they look a bit old now and so on, but the challenges were still there. It's like, the architects for a project get together and decide the tools and technologies you're using. New people come onto the project. Not everyone's got the same background and skills, but you want everyone to work in a consistent way. This is where ClickStarts can be really valuable, because the ClickStarts, I said, they're not demos in the sense that you can customize them. You can create your ClickStart based on a project. So you could have a team of people prototyping an application, put all that together, pull it into a ClickStart, and then everyone who joins the team, first thing they do is they run the ClickStart. They've got a working example of that application with all the build and the automated tests all set up for them, so that you can just get going and you can start doing it right from the beginning. So there's a lot of value there, and particularly for when you want to, for example, hand off a project to a customer to get feedback if you're an implementation partner or something like that. It's extremely valuable. You just give a link to the ClickStart, click, it all runs in the cloud, so you don't have to worry about whether they've got their database set up on their site, and they can just run exactly what you give them, and they can then give you feedback, and you can have that much more iterative way of working. So my shoulder does actually hurt quite a lot, and because I'm not going to be able to click very well, I hope you're going to forgive me. I am going to run a short demonstration, and I'm going to do it via a video. Sorry, there we go. So I recorded this myself just before the weekend, actually. I didn't know I was going to smash into Page Mill Road, but I thought it was worth doing. So here's the Eclipse environment, and I've loaded up the CloudBees plugin, and that's the initial bit, I was just setting that up. I was configuring my username and password credentials. So I chose to run a ClickStart, and I said I want to run a Tomcat-based application. Sorry, it's just cut off the left. I'll try to explain what's going on. But as part of that, it set up my project with my source code. Here's the Git repository. It created a local Git repository with a remote repo on CloudBees that's all part of the build. There's an application with a database also deployed on CloudBees, and there's actually a local Eclipse data connection there. So I can run the application either locally or I can run it in the cloud. So the other thing that we set up is the build job. So there's a Jenkins build job that's set up, ready to run. It's going to be triggered whenever I push a change to that remote Git repository. So what I'm doing here is I've just gone into the application and I've just made a tiny change to the index.jsp. I just want a change that I can commit that's going to trigger some activity. So I've committed that, and I'm actually pushing it to both the local repository and to the upstream repository in the cloud. So once I do that, the webhook is automatically going to trigger the continuous integration build. You can see there's a new job there queued up, and that's now running. And if I click on that, we can see the Jenkins build, and I can see it in the console output window. This actually took about a minute to run. It's a Maven, classic Maven build. I did speed this up a little bit, so in the interest of disclosure, I clipped a bit out there. And you can see the actual change, so everything can be traced back to the change that I made. And then if I go into the browser, the new version of the application is automatically deployed, and I can see my change reflected. So what you saw there in less than 2 minutes was I created a complete project with the source code, the repository, the continuous integration build job, a database, and then I went in, I made a revision to the code, pushed the change, and it redeployed. That's pretty quick. So just graphically, let's just recap on exactly what happened there, because there was a lot of stuff happened in that video. So I picked the framework, I wanted to try it out. That is the complete project cycle that got created there for me. A new repository, a build job, the application and the database. In that case, I didn't particularly bind in any partner services, but I could have done that. And once that's done, that's all there. That's still there sitting in my Eclipse workspace. Okay, it's not just a one-off operation. I've now got that project. I can go in and extend it. I can customize it. I can add things to it. I can go in and add Maven dependencies, start coding stuff. So I've got it. It's always there for me as a resource. And then I've got the ability to view it and manage it through either command line tools. So if you need to script stuff, you've got the command line SDK. I can look at it through the Eclipse environment. I can go in through Jenkins if you're used to Jenkins, and I can use all the Jenkins interface that you're going to be very familiar with. But that's very good and it's impressive, but if it were kind of opaque and you couldn't do that yourself and you couldn't customize it, it wouldn't really be very useful because you'd be limited just to the ClickStarts that we have thought of. But it's a very easy thing to put together because all that ClickStart really is a JSON file which is describing the steps that are needed to set up that project. So that if I can just decipher this one for you, what it's really saying is, okay, take this project, there in the CloudBees community GitHub site is the source Git repo. So you're going to be picking up the source code from there. We're going to clone that repo. And we're also going to pre-deploy the application. Again, this is just a sort of nice tweak that I didn't want to wait for the Jenkins build job to run the first time, so I pre-deploy a version of the application, and then when the build job runs, it just overwrites it. So that's what the app package is. But that can also be useful For example, if you have applications, if you have a ClickStart that sets up an application where the user has to do something to actually go ahead to the next step, then what we do is typically to use that app package to run up a web application that will deploy all the instructions about what you need them to do for setup. Okay? So you can cope with things where you have some manual setup. And then I have the runtime. So we have what we call the click stack. So this is where I can choose between a sort of a fully curated stack or a managed stack. And I specify that here. And then here's the database, and here's information about the Jenkins build. It's a fairly simple one. The file can get a bit longer, but not very much. And typically, all I have to do is to say, here's what I want to call my application. At the end of that, I've got that complete project with all those bits all working. And then I can go in and I can have at it and play with it and see if I can extend it, see if that's the right model for me, and so on. And the way you call it, so again, you can just write your own. And if you go into CloudBees community, go to the Git repos, have a look at them, you'll see all the different stacks that people like the Play framework guys and Scala community and so on contributed in here. We've got good stuff there from Meteor and all kinds of other frameworks. And all I'm really doing is, in that repo is that ClickStart.json file, along with all the other source code and everything. And I just give that location. You see raw github.com, CloudBees community, blah, 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 ClickStart.json, and I just pass that to the CloudBees. Grand Central is just like our, that's our main application, if you like, for the CloudBees PaaS. I just pass that in, and that runs my ClickStart. And if you wanted to edit that, change that, build your own ClickStart, all you do is drop in your ClickStart.json path there, boom, and off you go. You have your own ClickStart. So that's what we do. And what I thought I wanted to look at is to bring it back to this discussion of, why this is a very attractive model if you're trying to run enterprise Java applications. So if you look at, running a Java app, a straight Java app, well, you can do that on CloudBees, and there are plenty of good reasons why you might want to do that. I think that's not what most of our customers do, but what's really happening is you take your Java apps, you write your code, your Java main, and it does whatever you need it to do, and what we do, we will provide the JVM, we'll provide, obviously, all the things that come with the JVM, and we'll provide all that underlying infrastructure that virtualizes that and runs it in the cloud and so on. So we do all that for you. You just push up the jar, deploy it, and it runs. If you're running, let's say, an EE web profile app, let's say you've got a JBoss or a Glassfish web profile app, again, what we do for you is we run all the stuff below the deployment artifact. So in this case, it's going to be a WAR file, and then what we provide is the infrastructure to virtualize and run it and manage it. And we also provide the stack, which in this case is going to be not just the JVM, but all the container jars and so on that make up that runtime stack. And this is where it can be very useful that you have that level of control over what's actually in the stack. In most cases, you won't care. You'll just say, I want my app to run on JBoss EE6 web profile. That's the stack I want. But you might actually care. You might say, I want exactly this revision of that. I want to take this particular version of the jars. That stack is all visible. It's all open to you. You can just, it's going to be, you'll see it on GitHub in the community. You can just fork that repository. You can swap in a particular jar, pack that up, and deploy that as your own stack. It's not something most people do, but it's important that you're able to do it if you need to. And as I mentioned earlier, we have different categories of stacks. So if you think of things like, Tomcat, the JBoss, the Java main, all those kind of things, these are very well-known stacks. We have a lot of expertise in these areas. We will provide that full curated service. We will do all the updates, the security fixes, everything for you. There are other things in the other extreme where you have things that are actually delivered by the community. These things are moving fast. You know, there are changes coming in every day. There are pull requests coming in on these stacks. The community will maintain and update them. They're the right people to actually provide that level of support. What we do is to provide the runtime support for the containers. We will monitor them and manage them and so forth. Just wanted to throw this one up just to say, although I'm focusing very much on Java, this is not all about Java. This mechanism is totally general. So for example, we have stacks. There are ClickStarts in that list you'll find that run things like WordPress and Drupal and so on. Well, that's nothing to do with Java. What that is all about PHP. But again, the mechanism for building up the stack and for how we manage and deliver that to you is exactly the same. And once again, you can customize it in the ways that you need. So I'm going to skip these very quickly because we're coming to the end of the day, and I do want to let you go on time. The slides are all going to be available. What I just wanted to say is that PaaS as a concept brings a lot of value to really all the different stakeholders in a project. Okay, so I'm not going to run through all of these now because time is going to be against me. I've got some examples here which I'll leave for you to look at if you're interested, and please do get in touch with me if you'd like to know more about some of our customers and how they're using platform as a service to actually get some of these benefits. And there's Grupadeo, I'm skipping through Choose Digital, here's another one, Bullhorn, doing some very interesting stuff. I'm sorry if there are any of the customers in the audience, I really haven't got the time to talk about all of those now, but you'll find details on our website. Because I wanted just to finish up in this last 5 minutes by talking about some of the kind of projects that I've been building and that I enjoy sort of playing with, and why I think it's a great example of how this combination of the sort of the lightweight, cloud-oriented Java stack with mobile, with Amazon Web Service interfaces and software as a service is actually a really nice environment to develop with. And I mean, here are examples. If you go on our site, you'll find a lot of blogs that I've done all about how to, do continuous integration for mobile applications. So I've got a lot of examples all around different chess games. So if you love chess, you'll really like these. But if you're just interested in mobile development, you'll find them interesting too. We've got ClickStarts, for example. This is what my colleague put together for sort of people who want to start into iOS development. Again, most mobile applications actually have some sort of back-end component. Okay, there are some that are purely sort of on the phone, but most actually have to interact with some sort of service or data at the back end. And actually how you do that is something that there's quite an art to doing that. And the interaction of the mobile device and the APIs that are available and the back-end services deployed in the cloud is a very neat combination. And it enables you to solve a number of problems very nicely. And one of the ones that I thought I would show you is, if I can just come out of my presentation for a second. And if you want to see this, I'll just go into my Eclipse for a minute. I'm sorry if this is a little bit small, but I'll do my best here with my poorly arm. I have a number of projects here, and if you just go on our site and you search for the token vending machine, I don't know if any of you are familiar with this. This is a concept Amazon introduced a year or so ago, and they've recently extended it. There's some quite interesting stuff about the use of the Amazon Secure Token Service and Identity Federation, which I'd recommend you to check out. But the nice thing about this is, just think about the problem. Suppose you have a mobile app and you want to use services like queuing, like notification, and so on. Now, if you want to do that on a mobile scale, you could be talking about millions of users all over the globe, different points of presence, all that kind of thing. How are you going to do that? Well, you need, just having every mobile device having to go back to a server, even a whole network of servers, is not necessarily the most efficient way of doing it. So you need some kind of global cloud-friendly infrastructure which is going to provide those kinds of services. Well, to me, that screams out for the kind of Amazon-style infrastructure. So if I want a mobile app that for any reason is going to allow a user, any arbitrary user, to come in and, let's say, post a message or something like that, some sort of a queuing or a topic paradigm is very suitable. But if I want them to post to a topic, let's say, that I own, ultimately this is going to go onto my Amazon account, I've got to have some control over that. I can't just say, have at it, and here's my Amazon key, you guys just get on with it and do whatever you want. I have to have some restrictions around that. Well, there's a technology called the Secure Token Service, which lets you control that. So, for example, here's an application, and you'll see this. So what I have on the CloudBees platform, I actually have an application, which is a simple web application that's running, but it uses the Amazon identity and access management, IAM, APIs to issue temporary time-limited tokens that allow anyone who accesses that service to get a limited period token which lets them do certain things and only certain things on my account. And for example, I now have a client application which I'm running in an Android emulator here on my local machine, and I can, if I'm connected to the network, which I hope I am, basically I can use that token, looks good so far, and I can actually go in and I can look at the tokens. No, I'm sorry, I'm not connected. But what should happen here, and what I might just be able to do, but what it will let me do is to go in and use those Amazon APIs. Using that token for the access control, I can then go in and I can access the services of my Amazon account directly from the mobile device. And all that is really very easy to develop in Java. So the service that did all that, and you'll find all this, there's a GitHub repository behind that ClickStart that I put together. And you'll see the code in here. It's all based on an Amazon sample, and it's very simple, classic Java code. This is the attraction of Java as a development environment. There are these very clear, very well documented, well supported Java APIs for all these services. They're really not hard to work with, and if you go in and take a look at them, you'll see exactly how to use them. And the only bit of this that is really in any way complicated is the bit that hooks this up with the secure token service. And again, even that is very easy to work with, and if you just look at the sample code, you'll see how that works. So this is what I mean by this combination of the ecosystem of Java tooling, all the low-level infrastructure APIs when you need them, RESTful services that let you access SaaS APIs when you want to use those, all pulled together, all delivered in the cloud using an elastic on-demand model through PaaS. I think this adds up to quite a nice environment in which to develop. And if you throw in the convenience of things like ClickStarts and the sort of tooling integration and so on, then this is why I think this is quite a nice way to work. So that's me up to my 550. I know I'm standing between you and the beer, so I don't want to go on any longer. I have some more slides. A lot of them are self-explanatory. I'll be happy to kind of leave them with you. And thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, I'll be here and happy to answer them. But it was great to have you here. Thanks very much.